Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 9 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. Couple meaty ones. Let's get to it. Case file number 2944, written by Spiritual Nose 6647. Chronos on the Backroads. I planned to visit my parents over a weekend while I was attending university at Wisconsin, Green Bay. Our plans were that I was to arrive around 4 p.m. on Saturday. The trip usually took about 3 hours on my motorcycle, taking backcountry roads. That day, I got distracted in the morning and called my father about 10 minutes before 4 and told him to go ahead and have dinner without me, as I expected to arrive about 7 p.m. The trip was otherwise normal. I stopped for gas and stretched my legs for a while, about halfway. When I got to my parents' house, my father confronted me and asked me why the hell I was being a wise guy, and why did I call from our town? I didn't. The time was 4:05 p.m. He said I called about 10 minutes prior to my arrival. There is no way the trip could have been under 15 minutes. I spent about that much time getting gas. Also curious was when I drove back to Green Bay. I left around 4 p.m. on Sunday, but as I got within a mile of my dorm, the sky went dark. I thought it was a late summer storm. However, the clock in my dorm room showed 10 p.m., 3 hours later than could be explained, just like how I arrived 3 hours early the day before. So normally in events like this I would just say, oh, it's a space-time portal, distorted in time and space. Normally it's just space though with these portals. So this is an extra layer because of the time element. You remember stopping for gas, and yet, even discounting the driving, you just took longer just to get gas to fill up your tank. If this is a space-time portal, we're talking about the time element being a core component, which is rare. Normally you just port forward a couple miles, usually. That's not even that far normally. In fact, I don't recall any account where someone is ported to a different country, thousands of miles away, across the Atlantic or something like that. That would be incredible if it happened. But no, normally these are localized. It's just the time variable that is a unique factor in this story. And now time for the question of the day. What is your guilty pleasure TV show or movie? For me, I think it has to be a movie. It's Armageddon. It makes me feel feelings. It goes beyond what the movie should be able to do because it's so ridiculous. The science aspect of it doesn't make any sense. Almost nothing holds up. But everything is said confidently and treated like it makes sense. So you can suspend your disbelief very easily, I find. And then the emotional weight towards the end. I won't spoil it in case you haven't seen it, but it is a fairly old movie. So I would say go watch it if you want to cry at a movie. Because if that doesn't hit you, nothing will. Case file number 2945, written by Zookeeper Game Do, 8501, Rain at the Window. I had a full-blown premonition once. My friend was going to be married in a few months, and I was in the wedding party, so we had been planning the bachelor party, but didn't get into any specifics yet. But one night, about 3 months before the wedding, I had this extremely intense dream. In the dream, I'm sitting in a restaurant with all the guys at a table, and I look to my left and see a big window on the far wall, and it is raining outside. Then I feel my pocket vibrate, so I reach down and have a text. It's a picture taken from directly behind me, so you can actually see the back of my head and everyone else at the table. I look behind me and nobody is there. It felt weirdly sinister. I woke up totally exhausted, sweating all over, and had this buzzing sound in my ears. I had to just sit there with my head in my hands. It felt like my brain was just swimming. It was so bizarre. I tell my wife about it, and she's just kind of like, "That's weird, man." So, a few months later, it's finally time for the bachelor party. We're sitting at the table at a restaurant I've never been to before. I look to my left, and on the far wall is a big window. It is raining outside. I start to feel like this all seems very familiar. The brother of my friend is sitting across from me, and he reaches into his pocket, pulls out his phone, and looks at it. He smirks and shows me his phone. It's a picture of the back of my head, and all of us sitting at the table. I whipped around, and my friend's sister was sitting a few tables away from us and sent the pic as a joke. She and her family didn't know we were going to be there that morning. At this point, I'm really freaked out because the only details that were different is that it wasn't my phone that got the message, and it was my friend's sister who sent the picture, not some otherworldly presence of whatever. It seemed too specific to be a mere coincidence, and I'm weirded out by it to this day. Your wife in the dream was very, very chill about someone taking a picture of you. But yeah, in reality, this is just foreknowledge, and it does happen to some people. I like to think they're just connected to the great beyond, whatever that truly means. Simulation, God, spaghetti monster, I don't know, but there's more information that we're clearly capable of accessing, or some people are. Case file number 2946, written by Lonesome Wiener. The badge that came home. I worked in the lab at a factory for a month not too long ago. I did the basic quality control of the sample so that my colleagues had more time to focus on the other things that had to be done. On my final day, I had to finish a bit earlier so I could change clothes, put my work outfit into the bin so they would get washed, and I headed back to the lab to turn in my keys and the personal tag I needed to open the gate to get into the factory terrain. The lab was empty when I returned. It was a little past 4 p.m., so everyone already left. I reached into my pocket with all my keys and placed the keys from my locker next to each other, and after that, I grabbed my badge and placed it right next to the keys. The only things in my pocket at this point were the key from my bike lock and the key from my house. After that, I went outside, grabbed the key to unlock my bike, and headed to the exit of the site. Whilst riding my bike, I was wondering how I could exit since I didn't have my badge to open the gate. Since I couldn't leave that way, I backed up at the gate and used the exit for trucks. After that, I just drove home thinking it was all good. When I arrived home and reached into my pocket to open the door, the first thing I felt was my badge. When I looked at it, my first thought was, if this is my badge, then what did I place next to the keys? Then I thought that maybe I had placed it there and took it back because I needed to leave the factory terrain. But that would be weird because when I went outside, I was wondering how I could open the gate since I didn't have it. And even if I took it, I would have felt it when I put my hand in my pocket to take my key to open the bike lock. I went inside, tossed it on the table, and looked at it for a minute, absolutely confused as to how it suddenly reappeared into my pocket. To this day, I still don't understand how it happened. Case file number 2947, written by Emergent C. When the Moon Split the Sky. In 2010, there were 2 supermoons and 2 lunar eclipses in the same year. I was out at the edge of the Puget Sound in Seattle at a place called Carkeek Park with a friend, waiting to see the second of the supermoons. There were actually a ton of people there waiting to see the moon rise over the horizon in the upper parking lot. Since it was high ground and folks were loud and partying, my friend and I walked down to the beach to get a little more space and quiet. I remember hearing people literally applaud as the moon rose behind us. Though we could not yet see it from our vantage point, the water started responding with sudden strong, short, repeating waves after being nearly still moments before. The waves got so intense, we had to stand up and move back. Just then I saw this huge golden light appear to rise from the water in front of us, far off in the distance. I assumed I was seeing the reflection of the moon and turned around to look at the moon directly. It was so bright I was blinking my eyes. I turned back toward the water, and what I thought were lights in my vision turned out to be 2 hovering, dancing, golden, shimmering objects flying above us, just above the area I thought I saw the water illuminate. These 2 flying objects hovered, then danced figure eights, then flew from right to left with abrupt stops in between. The crowd in the parking lot saw them too and started cheering and yelling stupid crap like, "E.T., phone home!" Then the objects changed colors from gold to red and back to gold again, in unison. The 2 objects then flew toward each other with what felt like great force and just kind of became one object with a brighter light. They didn't crash, they just merged into one, silently. As this light grew, I noticed the sound of the cheering people was starting to fade away, and I felt the pressure start to build in my ears. I didn't hear voices or anything, but I felt consumed by this feeling that everything was going to be okay, like a warmth had just washed over me. I can't explain it, but it was like I knew I needed to let it go. It didn't feel like I was going to die per se, at least there was no fear, but I knew I needed to let go. I looked at my friend who was staring at me with a concerned face and back toward the light. I stared at the light until it consumed my vision completely, and I felt in almost a meditative state. It felt like nothing else existed. I remember taking a deep breath and hearing the sound of myself breathing out. In what felt like an instant later, I came to. I was standing on top of a picnic table in a different park that I knew was nearly 2 miles away. My friend was pleading with me to get down. I asked her how the hell we got there and why I was up on the table. She said all of a sudden, while we were looking at the bright light, I suddenly started acting childlike and even speaking in a slightly different voice. She said moments after she noticed a change in me, the light from the flying objects just faded away from view slowly. Right after that, I took off running down the beach, laughing like a little kid. She said I was running and climbing over rocks and things along the way like a dog that had been let off the leash for the first time. She chased after me and basically babysat me for a couple hours. My friend didn't believe in cell phones back then, so I had no way to call for help. I had left my flip phone in my car back at the parking lot. My friend explained that during this weird episode, that at some point she had yelled, "Come back, OP." She said I stopped and turned to her and very seriously said, "My name isn't OP." That obviously scared the hell out of her, so she just kept following me at a distance until I got to that park and climbed up on the table and started dancing with my arms up in the air. I want to make it clear that I am no more of a runner than I am someone who would dance on a table. I hate attention. I don't drink. I would never make a scene like this ever. And luckily, my friend had known me for well over a decade and knew that too. She said that when she finally caught up with me, I was dancing and waving my arms and then abruptly stopped and was totally silent and still for a few seconds before sounding like myself again and saying, "How did I get here?" When I asked if she had seen those objects flying on the beach, she said yes and retold the whole story just as I remembered, until the moment I was consumed by the light and wound up across town. We eventually walked back to our cars and decided to go back to her place to stay the night since neither of us wanted to be alone after that. We never made sense of what happened that night. A few weeks later, I got a concussion in an unrelated accident and had extensive brain imaging and testing done. Had the supermoon event been due to a brain-related issue, I would have found it then. I know a literal crowd full of people at Carkeek Park saw those objects. I know we're not the only ones. I like the moon stories tonight. There's something very cosmic about it, even though it's right in our cosmic backyard. But this whole story is more UFO related, alien related, and it reminds me of a story I read quite a while ago where someone was just camping in the desert and apparently aliens possessed them in a sense or were talking to them telepathically. There was no physical words being spoken, but they could hear it in their head. The pressure you felt in your ears makes me wonder, are we talking about a failed connection, or maybe a connection that was attempting to override your mind, and aliens came down not as themselves, but simply taking you like an android body, just possessing you temporarily, to use your body like a drone to experience a bit of the world through your eyes while you were suppressed. That is extremely, extremely unsettling to me, I have to say. I do not like the idea of anyone possessing me, be it a demon or an alien. And I think people would maybe interchange this in that sense. And that might even be where the idea of possession comes from, where people really are possessed, but not by demons of hell, but by aliens. Maybe not even with nefarious intent, although I guess it depends. If they start crawling on the wall, maybe then you have to question things. But just dancing on a table, that's not too bad. Can work with that. Case file number 2948, written by Tumblr01, The Diner That Led to Doom. I want to say first, this isn't a story I share with people who know me. It sounds crazy, and if I wasn't with someone who also witnessed it, I would think I was hallucinating it. Anyways, on to the true story that happened about 15 years ago. A friend and I decided to go to a diner for a late night meal. We were both home, and one of us texted the other to see if they wanted to come eat. I ended up driving and picked up my friend, and we went to a diner in Fort Lee, New Jersey. We went to this particular diner because my friend was friends with someone who used to work there. Anyways, we both were disappointed in our food. It was poorly made by New Jersey diner standards. Neither of us finished our meal and decided to head home instead. While driving, I got distracted by our conversation on how bad the food was and made the right turn too early. I turned into RT4 and wanted RT46 instead. But since we were in no rush, neither of us thought it was a big deal. I saw an exit to Grand Avenue, which is where we wanted to go from RT46, so I took it. It didn't take us where we were expecting. I thought maybe if we kept driving, we would eventually pass through a part of Grand Avenue we recognized. We quickly realized we were in an odd place. I say this because we're driving in the woods. This part of New Jersey is right outside of New York City and is very developed. As we are driving, we see an abandoned car to the left of us. The car didn't look old or beat up. We were questioning why someone would leave their car there, then suddenly we saw a police car up ahead. I figured we would go up to the officer and ask for directions or at least find out where we were. As we approached the police car, we noticed all its lights were on and the driver's side door was open. We saw no one around us and started seriously wondering what the fluck is going on. The road up ahead curves, and the trees block our view of what's ahead. I see red light coming through the trees and figure we are close to civilization again. We finish with the curve and I realize that the red light is coming from the moon? This was no ordinary moon. It covered the entire sky. It was so close you can see all the craters easily. They were filled with what appeared to be blood. Some of them appeared to be overflowing with blood, leading to rivers of blood. The best way I can describe this is to imagine a volcano spewing blood. I'm watching all this while driving in silence. I say to myself that my food must have been drugged or that I'm having a mental breakdown. I tell myself I'm not going to mention what I'm seeing, drop my friend home, and then drive myself to the hospital. As I'm observing the bloody moon that appears so close that it will crash into the earth, I'm pondering what is wrong with me. After several minutes of silence, my friend says to me, "We're going to die." I ask him why he would say that, and he looks at me and says, Don't you see the moon? It's covered in blood and it's going to crash and kill us all." Believe it or not, when he said this, I felt a huge sense of relief because at least I'm not hallucinating. We both can't see the same hallucination at the same time. I told him the truth about why I stayed silent when I saw it. I describe what I see and he points out various parts of the moon, and we both quickly come to the conclusion that we are looking at the same thing. Oddly enough, we are calm. I explain that I don't believe that we're looking at the moon because if it truly was as close as it appeared, we would experience its gravitational effects. But we both agree that death is at hand. Some time passes and the road has another steep curve. The trees block out the sky, and the red light from the moon continues to shine from them. After driving through the curve, the woods abruptly end. I stop the car and we both look behind us. The bloody moon is gone. I tell my friend this doesn't make sense and we need to go back into the woods. He refuses and demands to be dropped off at his home. I drop him off and duplicate the drive I made earlier to get back to the moon. I couldn't even find the woods again. The exit to Grand Avenue didn't lead to the same place as before. For the next several days, I drove around and went through Yahoo Maps and MapQuest to try to find the woods, but could not find anything close enough to be a candidate. We both talk about it to this day and try to find some meaning in it. My friend was more open to people about what we saw than me, and people tended to think he was crazy or super religious. I stayed relatively silent since I knew no one would believe me. I would say there are many stories that are creepy, terrifying, horror-based that I read on this channel that are still true, or at least people believe they happen to them. They experience it. What actually happened in this case, is it a hallucination? I don't think so. How can two people hallucinate the exact same thing? I think there are accounts of that happening, but I wonder how does that happen, right? How are minds in perfect sync if they're in a disordered state? I don't know. That part doesn't make sense to me. So anyways, going by this actually happening, are we talking about a different universe? But as you say, if the moon was that close, the gravitational effects would already be disrupting the planet. I mean, The tides would be going wonky, one side would be pulling so much on water, you would basically be flooded in New Jersey. So I don't know, are we talking a different universe where the laws of physics are different? But that's not possible either, because if the laws of physics of almost anything, like the electromagnetic force, gravity, anything like that is different, then the universe would never have coalesced into from energy into matter, as it has to be so finely tuned, which is actually, it's good evidence of either a creator of some kind, like God, or a simulation, because it's just so perfect. If it's off by even a tenth of a decimal point in any factor, it doesn't work. So I'm just left pondering, what is this? A blood moon, like a literal blood moon flowing with blood. Even if it was a different universe, why would there be blood there? Maybe it was a projection of some kind, just intended to terrify people, but it's not real. The idea that the military or the government would fake UFOs being here to incite panic or something. There's a name for it, I forgot it off the top of my head, but maybe it's something like that. In a different universe, the government did go through with that plan, and that's why you're in a wooded area in New Jersey where it doesn't make sense to be wooded. It's not as developed there for some reason. And the government's terrifying everyone with the image of a blood moon. Terrifying indeed. Case file number 2949. Written by Plate Shut Overlock. Frames cut from reality. When I was a kid, my parents used to smoke cigarettes. I was in the dining room, and through the doorway could see my mom in the kitchen at the sink, hand-washing dishes. The way the kitchen was configured is that my mom was at the wall on the opposite side of where the doorway was, and her back was completely turned to the doorway. Everyone else was gone for the day. I was looking at the Bic disposable lighter that had a butterfly design that was sitting on the dining room table, just staring at it lying on its side. All of a sudden, the lighter instantly vanished right before my eyes. It was like watching an old film with some of the frames cut out and spliced back together. It was that quick. I looked up and my mom was still in the kitchen at the sink, doing the dishes with her back turned. Even if she was very quick with her hands, there was no way I would have noticed the blur of her hand going by, nor would I have missed her walking back into the kitchen after it happened. And she surely would have said something along the lines of, "I don't want you playing with this." It's well over 40 years later, and I still don't know what happened that day. Another unexplained incident that happened many years later was coming into the kitchen and finding everything covered with a very fine coating of powder. It looked like baby powder, but it seemed a bit finer, and the coating was even throughout. We didn't have any baby powder in the house. This one isn't as dramatic as a lighter incident, and I'm thinking some weird vibration happened in the building and might have shaken stuff off of the drywall. But the fineness and evenness had me baffled and still does. That morning was the only time it ever happened there. This is a very rare DOP instance where you see the object completely disappear, or some cases you see it frame interlaced back into reality, the opposite of DOP, but usually the very close cousin. They are more often than not related. Objects come back as often as they disappear, almost. I do think that whatever system is in place attempts, at least as well as it can, not to let people directly see this happening, but it doesn't always work. Case file number 2950, written by Anonymous, The Laughing Colonel, and Other Truths. I worked at a nuclear weapons storage depot in the Nevada desert outside of Nellis Air Force Base for 6 years. It's now shut down. When people say UFOs are attracted to nukes, they are telling the truth. But so much more goes on. My first night there, I witnessed a ball of light trigger sensor on the fence line, prompting a security response. The ball got chased by 3 patrols as it flew directly above the fence line, before finally taking a sharp turn out into the desert. We discovered 3 mutilated donkeys across a span of 2 weeks, all about a mile from each other, and seemingly dropped off out of nowhere. No tracks in or out. Various organs removed from each, no blood anywhere. No tears in flesh, all cuts. Scavengers didn't even touch the bodies. I witnessed a figure atop a roof of a structure just 30 meters from me, and 14 other personnel did too. It was just standing there watching us. I took a spotlight and shined it up there, and as soon as the light hit the figure, it disappeared. We all saw it happen. I heard a man laughing maniacally once, nothing there. Sweeping with night vision and thermals revealed nothing. 3 other witnesses. We wrote it off as the Laughing Colonel, an urban legend passed down by the security personnel for ages. While on patrol in an adjoining conventional weapons storage area, my partner and I parked next to a hot pad loaded with 500-pound bombs about to be shipped overseas. I heard a soft cooing sound coming from the pad. Me and my partner did a security sweep off the pad, and the cooing kept happening and seemingly luring us past the pad and into the pitch-black desert. Night vision and thermals revealed nothing. We did not pursue, just did another sweep of the pad and moved along. While on training exercise, our machine gun Overwatch team spotted 2 figures on thermals in the desert behind us. Exercise was immediately cancelled when Security 1 said he didn't place any bad guys out there. Everyone locked and loaded, set up a sweep. The Overwatch team observed the figures going prone and backing away from our sweep element, then disappearing when we got close. Our thermals confirmed trace heat on the ground despite us doing the sweep, never seeing anything. The weirdest event was when I was on an exterior patrol outside the fence line. Got a call to respond to a truck approaching on the side of a mountain nearby. Not unusual, most people didn't know we're out there and we got off raiders all the time we'd scare the crap out of. Visually confirmed trucks on NVGs, then suddenly the headlights disappear. We believe they turned them off and are now approaching on foot, so call for K9 and move to a blocking position where I know everyone will have to cross past us to approach the perimeter. We are there for about 10 minutes, when one by one, patrol members watching us from high points on the inside, column lights appearing at our 12, 3, and 9 o'clock, in effect flanking us, with the fence line about 300 meters behind us. We see and hear nothing, not even on night vision goggles or thermals. Dogs never react. Suddenly, panic patrol cars in the lights are rushing us. We are already locked and loaded. I tell my partner to put a grenade in the tube. Nothing happens. Dog never indicates. Our radios died, and after 10 minutes we hiked back to the fence line only to discover we were out of contact for twice as long as I thought we were. Very paraphrased event, cause on my phone, but our radios only started working when we were back in the fence line. There's more, but these were the highlights or events I'm allowed to speak about. The world is not as normal as you believe it is. You know, this story felt very familiar at the beginning. I think it's because I've heard of this base before, and I think it's just, there's probably a lot of people that work there that have stories to share. So it's very interesting. And the creepiest one is definitely the entity just watching you that you can't explain. You know, what is it? It's laughing? Okay. Hard pass on that. And if you think about it, it does make sense. If aliens are here, they would observe a lot of military operations. Not necessarily because they intend to invade. If they wanted to conquer us, there's nothing we could do. Aliens at advance to reach us, it's game over. We're dead before we even know we're under attack. You know, they drive an asteroid to crash into us, or they create a novel virus that kills us all without us even knowing that they're doing it. So no, there's no alien battles like they see in the movies, even though those are cool, like Independence Day, great movie, but it's nonsense in that context. You're not going to be dogfighting alien ships in your F-35. They would just be observing to see what we're like. Are we the aggressive type as a species? And yeah, in many ways we are. But I guess it depends on context. We probably wouldn't attack an alien that advanced. I mean, you'd hope so, right? Case file number 2951, written by White Wolf 3397. The Hand in the Closet. One of these events from my childhood was at night. I had to be 12 or 15 and was home alone. I was playing on the computer in our den, and directly across from it was a door that went up to the pantry, which had a set of stairs that led to the attic. Suddenly, I heard a loud thump, then the repeated thumps as something fell down the stairs. My heart stopped because there was a door at the top of the stairs that shouldn't have allowed anything to do so. I remember getting up and walking over to the door, but being unable to touch the knob. Then the sound of pacing started above me. Slowly walking backwards, I returned to the den and curled up in a ball on the couch, staring at that door as the sound of a thump, followed by the sound of something following down the stairs, happened again. This continued on for hours, till shortly before my parents got home, it stopped and never happened again. My dad went up after they got home and confirmed nothing was moving or anything. This was the same house I wouldn't shower in if nobody was home either. It was just a bit odd. The one we moved into after this one was worse though. Also, why have I never showered there alone? We lived in a very old house, and in the bathroom were 2 older medicine cabinets. They were the type you pushed close and they'd latch. They were a nightmare to open, and you had to really pull on them. They would not open on their own, I can promise that. One night when I was 12 or 13, I went to shower while home alone, and as routine went, I always pushed them tightly closed. I, to this day, hate mirrors facing me, and then hopped in the shower. I'd only been in for a few minutes when the sound of creaking hit me over the sound of the water. I peeked out and one of the cabinets had opened and the mirror was now facing me. In it, I saw a dark, shadowed man's face. I screamed, hopped out and grabbed my towel, then sat in the living room shaking till my parents came home. They naturally denied it and said I probably had imagined it, but I knew what I saw. I never showered alone there again. Shortly before I turned 16, we moved into a basement apartment. Really old and creepy as hell. I hated living there and was never comfortable. One of the first nights there, I was in my bedroom, supposed to be asleep. There were these rolling doors on the closet and I had to close them. Just like mirrors, closets are not a favorite thing. Then one side started to slowly creak open. I was horror-struck and stayed completely still as a hand on my door pushed it open. There was no obvious person, just a hand and a black shadow in the corner of it. This was the same house where, semi-routinely, things would just move when we hadn't touched them. Shadows rarely seemed like just shadows, and I would often wake to see a man standing in the doorway of whatever room we were in. We also fostered kittens there, and they'd suddenly stop and watch things that weren't there, their little heads moving to follow unseen movements. An example from a vacation comes when we traveled to the south side of the state and had stopped at a valley viewing spot. I was with my mom and 2 of my friends, and we were hanging out on the ledge, talking and joking, when I noticed a man. He was probably a half-mile away from us, leaning against the fence. He caught my eye because he was the only other person nearby, but when I looked at him, he was dressed in different clothes, more Western than you'd usually see nowadays. I glanced away to catch one of my friend's attention, to point him out, but when I looked back, he was gone. Just gone. He couldn't have stepped behind anything or disappeared into a building. There was nowhere for him to go. Later on that night, when we sat down for dinner, one of my friends brought it up, and we realized that each one of us had noticed him at one point or another, and that we could all describe the stranger perfectly, but that he had vanished after that first look. It was truly a shocking moment, and the first time I'd ever seen a full apparition when I wasn't alone. Case file number 2952, written by No Comment 7234. Breathing life into luck. So I'm chilling on my couch, trying to avoid scrolling on Reddit or playing mindless games, so literally just sitting and thinking. We have some purple clovers on the shelf. I've always had a thing for being able to find 4-leaf clovers, and was thinking about that. These ones haven't grown any 4-leaf clovers, but there's also not that many of them, maybe 15 in the pot. They've been struggling. Suddenly, I get a feeling that I should breathe on the clovers and almost infuse my will into them to grow a 4-leaf one. I know it sounds crazy, but that's the best way I can describe it. So I exhale hard from my nose. I exhaled straight down. I'm about 10 feet away from the clovers, but I see a few of them move significantly right where I imagined blowing on them. There was one clover I was focused on, and it was the main one that moved. Few others around it moved as well. It wasn't like a gentle push or anything either. It was like someone blew hard downward on them. We don't have central air. We have window AC units, and it wasn't on. No open windows or cracks, and even if there were, it's not windy at all today. I went over and inspected the plant after to see if it may have been a really big bug or spider or something, but didn't see anything. No other plants around it moved, and only a few of the clovers did. Like I said, my mind is doing everything it can to rationalize and explain how it happened, but I can't. I didn't get a 4-leaf clover out of it. I just got a windy mystery. Now time for the jokes of the day. What do you get when you cross a Russian night with a homosexual? Sergey. So bad. We're at the library browsing the horror section when I told my wife that of all his works, Stephen King's Pet Sematary is the most frightening story he's ever written. She looked at me and said, "You really think it's as scary as a book?" I'm like, "No, I literally just said Pet Sematary is." That's a funny joke. The only book from Stephen King I've read is Carrie, his first one. Pretty good. And I do want to get to others. Fun play on words. It. The damn clown. I do know it's about a clown. That's all I know, though. At the doctor's for my flu shot, I told the nurse I'm terrified of needles. I asked, "Any chance you can give it with the lights off?" She said, "I'll ask the doctor, but it's a shot in the dark." A rancher with only 95 cattle managed to get 100 into the pen. All he had to do was round them up. What was the man from DC charged with after throwing a sandwich at an FBI agent? Assault with a deadly weapon. Good news on that though, the grand jury did not go to indict him, which is nice because assault over a sandwich, you shouldn't attack people, but throwing a sandwich, you don't belong in jail for that. I don't think so anyways. It's just, the absurdity of it is so crazy. Plus you're wasting a good sandwich, don't do that. Alright, YouTube up here thinks you'll like this video, check it out, and like the video, subscribe. I'll see you next time.